Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Nostalgia Podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And I'm Jessica Tercero.
And this week we're joined by...
Danny Barkley in the house. What?
Hello, hi.
Our first ever guest. Look at this.
No.
Hi, hello.
We're so excited.
And also our producer.
Yes. I'm here to just check up on you guys and make sure you're doing a good job and not
you.
wasting anybody's time. Just kidding. I love you guys.
Except for yours when you edit all of the things.
No, come on. I love it. I love doing it.
So, Danny, who are you?
I don't know. I'm an editor of this podcast. Producer is a loose term, but I guess I'm into it. I am a professor at a college, and that's not important. It doesn't matter. I don't need to say all that. I'm going to cut that out. Hey, Danny, cut that out. I love you. Yeah, just editor is fine.
Okay, cool.
Editor.
So, Danny asked specifically to be on this podcast because this week we are talking about Tron!
Tron.
And Tron Legacy.
Yes.
So, Tron 1982, and then Tron Legacy, what was that, 2010?
2010. That's almost been 10 years.
Dang.
Can you guys
Wow,
believe that?
really?
Yeah.
Shit.
Almost 10 years.
Okay.
A lot of this podcast just turns into you guys talking about, like, can you believe that was that long ago?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's like,
It's-
it's nostalgia.
Wait, that's why we call... Oh, okay.
Wow.
I also have no idea how time works. Also, time is an illusion. So
Timey-wimey.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
you know, especially when
Time
you're
is
in
a
the
construct
digital
of man.
realm.
Truly. Yeah. Railroads, you know?
Magnets, how do they work?
I know. Like,
Do you guys think time works the same or differently in the digital world?
Oh, it works.
As
It works.
oh, it works differently.
It works differently.
'Cause didn't they
go over
say?
that. They go
Yeah.
over that.
Yeah.
We are
Okay.
getting way ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
love it.
All right. So, anyways, we have hella stuff to talk
Yeah.
about. So, let's do it.
Let's get into it.
Okay.
Boop, boop, boop.
All right, so first we're going to talk about Tron, the 1982 Disney film. In an attempt to discover proof that his life's work has been stolen, Kevin Flynn, a jilted ex-employee of tech giant Encom, gets sucked into the digital world while trying to hack into his old company's mainframe.
While imprisoned there, he makes friends with two programs, Tron and RAM, who escape their digital prison through a literal crack in the code. It is revealed that the MCP, Master Control Program, which dominates the digital world, is now attempting to dominate the physical world as well, and only Flynn and his new friends can stop it. Hijinks ensue. End of line.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about this here movie.
Tron.
I'm so excited.
I know.
First of all, I want to say that I watched this as like a teenager.
Okay.
And I loved it then. And that's important because you have never seen it.
I've never seen it. I've never seen the original or the other. I haven't seen any Tron-related anything. I may have played the video game once, one time, at one point, probably, because I think that visual is still in my head. But it could also just be commercials or pictures or whatever. My brain is a very wild place, so I could be making things up as I go. I have no idea.
What about you, Danny?
I saw this movie as a young teenager, maybe 20 years ago, and never again since. So when we watched it the other day, it was it's like seeing it for the first time through new eyes.
Ooh. Behind those hazel eyes.
Yeah, that's what the song's about.
Those flavor eyes.
It's about seeing Tron again after years and years. Oh, Kelly.
Okay, so, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. So first, let's just get straight into it. Tron is a computer cop.
The
Yes.
program Tron.
The program
yeah,
Tron.
the program
Yeah.
Tron.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a cop.
He's totally a cop.
Straight up, yeah.
Like, he's a security program. He's also, like, super cold.
Yeah.
Even, like, his friends are, like, presumably dead, and he's just like, yep. And he just, like, keeps going towards... Doesn't, like, check on him or anything. He's just, like, he is very single-minded, and he's very black or white in, like, how he decides what justice is.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
There's no gray area where... And I think it's really interesting because a lot of the other programs in this film are compassionate or have personalities. So, Rom is very, like... I'm an accounting program helping people save for retirement or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And then Laurie, when we meet her later, she's very...
It's Yori.
Oh, Yori,
It's
sorry. Yori, Laurie.
You mean Mai?
Laura is the real world woman, and Yori is the program version
Oh,
of her.
so I just, like, gave them a celebrity name.
Yeah, you gave them a celebrity
Oh,
couple
cute.
name. Yeah.
Okay.
I
So,
love that.
I mean, all of them pretty much are shadows of each other's selves, which we're
Which we're going to get into, I'm pretty sure.
But yeah, so she's very compassionate once she realizes who Tron is. But then even Dillinger's mirror, I forget what his name is.
Sark.
Sark, that's right. He is also just very angry. Like, they all have these, they're all so in touch with their purpose, with their emotion, right? But Tron, his whole purpose is just to pass judgment. So that's why he's so cold, because justice has to be blind, maybe? Do you think that's why? I don't know, because, like, his mirror in the real world, Alan, I mean, he's also a cop, right?
Yeah.
He's a turd, that's for sure.
Yeah.
What do I have in my notes for him? I have Alan is everyone's dad, hates games, hates fun, also a cop.
Truly, yeah. He's the one who'll buy you, like, one thing on Christmas, but then return it because you don't deserve it. You know what I mean? He'll give you that hope and then take it away. And he's like, no, you're not worth this. And you're like, oh my God, stop.
And it's not even like a toy, right? It's
no!
Like,
it's like a toothbrush. And you're like, I actually need that, Dad. Jesus.
You didn't work hard enough for it.
You didn't work hard enough for your oral health.
And I think that's important to point out, that Alan himself is kind of a shit. Because, I mean, he programmed Tron, and Tron is the literally physically represented by him in the digital world, like all the programs are. Because the actual program's purpose is to monitor connections between programs to look for things that shouldn't be there, he says. So he's supposed to be kind of this impartial kind of judge, sort of, like a cop, basically. Mm-hmm. Supposed to be impartial. Yeah. Supposed to be.
But yeah, isn't that the thing? Because, and I think this is something that carries through to, like, later films, too, or the later film, where justice is subjective. And what you think is right might not be somebody else's reality, may not be somebody else's what is right. So who gets to decide what is right and what is wrong?
But he is fighting against the Master Control Program, MCP,
right?
Who is unobjectively bad.
Yeah, not to be confused with ICP.
Right. I had a joke in my notes that when we're going to say MCP, I was going to say that's my favorite rapper.
Oh, love it.
Beat me to it. That's yours is very good too.
We both got there. It's fine. We both get credit.
We're all working together here. Yeah, MCP is unobjectively bad. So, I mean, Tron does pass down that judgment.
Yes.
It's just the way he goes about it, I guess, makes him very cop-like. And, like, I mean, he's doing a good thing overall for the digital world.
But yeah, he's just very detached, right?
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
He doesn't allow himself to see things from a nuanced perspective. It's always either, yes, this is good, yes, this is bad. And he doesn't show any emotion other than, like, the only time he shows emotion is when he gets access to that pure power, right?
Oh, the computer water?
To the stream of life.
The mercury that they drink with
computer
their
water.
hands.
He's like fucking face in, right? Yeah. And that's the only time we see him smile, other than when he's on his mission and then he sees that his friends aren't dead and he's like, oh, cool. It's so unceremoniously just, he smiles, and that's just proof in itself that it's a big thing, I guess, you know?
It impacted him in some big way.
Yeah, but that's the only time that he really shows emotion.
Because again,
is for power and for friendship.
I was going to say like a cop, but I would only say the power part. if this were the case.
I mean, they're like his like unofficial deputies, right? Because they're also cop friends, cop buds, buddy cops.
Yeah.
It's really a buddy cop movie, if you think about it.
Yeah, it is
between Flynn and
Tron.
Oh, that's very good.
Between Dillinger and the MCU, or the what is it?
MCP.
MCP. The Marvel Cinematic Universe.
She keeps calling it MCU also.
In my notes, like, I had it like written as MCU everywhere, and I'm all fucked up too. It's okay.
Totally.
I mean, it's owned by Disney. You never know.
Da-da-da.
It's true.
I want to point out something that I thought was hilarious because, I mean, it's largely male cast, as we know. But the first time we see, like, a female actor in this, she gets mansplained to the hardest.
Oh, my God.
And I think I wrote it down nearly verbatim. So they're about to, what is it? She says, here goes nothing. And then he comes up behind her. Interesting. What we propose to do is change something into nothing. What you should have said was, here goes something. Here comes nothing. And I was just like, you need to fucking not.
Fucking right. And well, this whole time, this guy isn't actually doing anything. He's just judging her work.
Yeah.
And then he's like his big contribution to this whole thing is setting the orange down.
Oh,
right. But like the whole time, and I mean, later it's established that he created the whole thing or whatever.
Yeah.
But like still, like he's just standing over her shoulder like, well, actually, you're a fuckhead, and you need to stop. Oh my God, it was so annoying. And then like even later on, he's the gatekeeper.
Yeah, which makes sense.
He's a literal gatekeeper.
Yep.
And the only reason that they're allowed entry is because she kind of like cries, right? Or like she, like, I mean, not cries, but she's just like, oh, please, please. And he's like, well, okay.
Yeah. That was, I thought that was funny.
Even after Alan and Flynn get there and they're talking to each other, he just keeps popping into frame. This crazy old Wizard of Oz man just keeps popping into frame like, well, actually, this is how computers work, see?
Yeah.
Yeah, he won't ever go away, and it's very annoying.
Yeah. He needs you to know that he's smarter than you.
Even the whole sequence where he's the gatekeeper of the tower, and they go up to him, and he's embedded in the stairs or something, whatever that was. He's just literally, that's the Wizard of Oz scene. Where no one gets in to see the wizard,
Yeah.
You can't talk to your user,
Well, also the look of it when they first approach him, he's in that, like, big, like, kind of dome thing with, like, the big pillars above.
And he's very high up.
He's very high up. It also looks very small in there. It did feel like a very, like, oh, that is wizardy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just there to be kooky.
He kind of actually reminded me of, like, the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland.
I like that.
Because he was so, like, hunched over and stuff, and just, again, kind of kooky and, like,
Stoned.
who are you?
Just stoned the whole time.
Yeah, just, like, hella, I don't know, what do old people take? Prozac?
I was going to say Xanax, but that's a young kid's game now. So
that's true,
I don't know what he's taking.
Or partying.
He is taking drugs. Of some
one
kind.
of those weekday pill bottles where he has to crack it open every day. Whatever it is, it's in there.
Crack open a
pill one with the boys. That's a
pill one.
I'm going to cut that out. Thanks.
I think you should leave it in.
Crack open a pill one with the boys.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Okay. So that kind of leads us to our next point, right? Where, like, the first time we're introduced to women in this film, or a woman, the singular woman in this film, is when she's being mansplained by some dude. And this is her baby. Like, this whole laser thing, like, she did all of this, and she's the scientist.
She tells Flynn, this is my life's work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another example of a dude using a woman's life's work to fucking...
Because when they go to hack into the system, she says, this is my life's work, and then she just walks away because now he's allowed to use it.
Yeah.
Like, I created this whole thing, and it's mine, it's my baby. Well, I guess do a good job with it. Bye.
Bye-bye.
But, yeah, the women don't get to ever, in this film and other films, but, like, they're not allowed to, like, see their project to fruition. It's like they are just making these things for men to use because they are treated as plot devices, really.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, like she's the love interest, which is this whole weird-ass love triangle that
For
I want to
both
get
of them.
Oh, my
that
God.
I want to get into
Oh, my God.
later.
No. Yeah.
Later.
It's real bad.
But even when he, like, finds her in the digital realm, he finds Yori, and she's like, oh, okay. And she's just literally like, I don't know if the coast is clear. Let me check. And she's going down. She's putting herself in danger.
She's a badass.
Yeah.
She's fucking great. But, like, the dudes don't even care. Like, this isn't really her mission, but then they, like, find her, and she's like, oh, yeah, okay, cool, let's go.
For
And then
sure.
she's like, cool, I don't know if it's clear, hold up.
Yeah.
And then she, like, goes down, and it's like, damn, bitch.
They totally abuse her, like, her skill, her power, her knowledge. Again, like you said.
Using
it's sort
women's
of
knowledge
It's not even
every
just
time.
using her as a plot device, it's using her as a prop, but also just using her as as a prop, right? For whatever good she has that they can use, that's why she's there.
Well,
for
and
them.
she's also supposed to pit the two main guys against each other, right?
Oh, for the in the love way.
In the love way, because she... When we're first introduced to Flynn, it's like 20 minutes into the film. We've heard about him, we kind of know about him, right? And our first real introduction to him is he's being like what every tech bro aspires to be.
Yeah.
Chilling with a bunch of women, watching him play video games, like making hella bank, living on top of his whatever. And he just kind of has, like, women hanging around him all the time. But then when she walks back into his life, and he knows that she's with this dude, his response is like, oh, does she still leave her clothes laying everywhere? Like,
Yeah.
He says as he takes off his own shirt in his room in front of her.
So he can do it, but he also wants to make sure the other guy in the room knows that they've been together.
Oh, it's a power move.
I just need you to know. It's a power move, which is just...
Well, there's even that line when they're talking about hacking in, and Laura says, oh, he had access. And then Alan goes, yeah, he had access to you, too.
Oh, yeah, that was that was the worst. It's like...
Oh, my God.
They're making conflict where conflict doesn't need to be, and that's all just, again, patriarchy,
Yeah.
right? That's all just, like, alpha male bullshit. And why does he need her when he clearly, like, has women just kind of falling all over him?
Also, falling over him, and I want to point this out very clearly, for beating what looks like a Star Fox 64 single minion as the final boss. And he just, like, turns a corner. There's literally nothing happening, and there's one guy. And he's like, boo, 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 boo. And they're just like... 900 million points, and he's like, yeah, that's me. And you're like, oh my god.
That's what video games are like. You beat one level, and women just fall all over you.
I guess that's
how it happens in their heads, apparently.
Well, that's what. That's what I've heard. At least in real life, that's what happens.
In my notes, I have that Flynn is discount Han Solo.
Yeah.
Oh well, wait. Do we want to get into that?
I mean,
now's a good time.
Oh well.
Oh, is it not?
I don't know, because I do want to point out one other thing about the women in this film.
I mean, there's a lot to say. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there is a lot to say, and so we have the one woman. There's only one other shot where we really see women. It's when he finds Yori, when Tron finds Yori, and she's in this, because she's doing clerical work, right? Like overseeing. Those are all women.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
at the console where they're all like typing it. They're basically typing.
right.
They're receptionists or secretaries or operators, like old-timey, like 1950s phone operators, basically. And it's all women. You can tell because their costumes are different, their helmets are different, which in itself is interesting. It's the same like in video games where if you're a female character, your armor is different because it has to show your cleavage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%.
Like, for this movie, the female costumes are also different, and their helmets are different. And it's just like, okay, well, you have to identify yourself from far away as being separate.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So
Yeah. And, like, also, it's so hard because, like, when she's first introduced, we don't get a name. She's just a person.
For Laura, you mean?
Yeah.
The actual woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we get Yori at 1 hour and 13 minutes in the film.
Yeah, she's a little late to the party.
Yeah.
But she goes that long in this film without having her own name. And the only part of her that... Because I don't think they ever call, like, Laura. They never...
Cue Lori.
It's so forgetful. It's such a...
I think they maybe say her name once. Maybe in the mansplaining scene. I'm not sure.
I mean, maybe. But, like, she's never really allowed to be a person. She's just kind of there. And she's just so forgettable. It's so hard to remember her name.
Well, Laura, but the Yori is a badass. Like, she is more adventurous than Tron. She knows her way around better. She has more plans and ideas. Like, he just has this general cop mentality of, I need to save the day. Mm-hmm. But then he's like, but I don't know what to do. And then she's like, oh, we have to go here. She jumps down the little ravine first. Mm-hmm. She has all the plans. She knows where to go. She knows what to do. Like, she is much more informed about this digital world than he is.
But she's also so one-dimensional. She doesn't really have a personality. She doesn't have anything. She literally serves to get the male hero to where he needs to go because he needs her knowledge in order to get to where he needs to be.
Right, yeah.
And then at the end, she's a prize for fucking both of them.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about her being adventurous and everything, right? But then what the fuck when she's in that ship about to be deleted with Flynn, right?
Yep.
And if she's this true adventurous person that, you know, we think that she is, or that they tried to build her out to be, she just fucking sits in the corner and cries.
She gives up, yeah.
And then she's brought back to life by Flynn, and she's like, oh my god, thank you so much, yeah, I'm ready. But so she's... what the fuck? Is all I have to say. And then he, like, kisses her, too, and it's just like... Well, it's, like... And I fucking hated that, because, like... And then at the end, there's that throwaway line when she kisses Tron and is like,
I thought you were dead.
We thought you were dead. And that's supposed to make it okay.
It's
like
almost like this was written by a man. Can you believe it? Oh my god, it's almost as if this person only sees women as romantic objects and people to steal from.
Well, the writer of the movie, but then also the men in the movie, because Tron is a representation of Alan's program.
Yes.
And Flynn, I guess, is still Flynn because he's a user. But yeah, so it's both the meta of it, of the actual writer of the movie, but then the men who write the programs as well only see, even in the digital world, women are still just secretaries. So the programs are written to reinforce those stereotypes.
Truly. And even when Flynn first meets her in the digital world, or meets Yori, that weird little interaction where he's like wide-eyed going up to her, and then Tron's just like in between them being like, wait, hey, stop.
Yeah.
He's like super animalistic predator, like kind of just like... Because I think they're trying to imply that, like, oh, this is the person I know in real life. But he's still trying to, what looks like, come on to her in this way that he did with Laura in the real world, right?
Well, and I think that maybe has to do with, maybe not as animalistic, but maybe, like, more ownership. Because she was his at one point, and now she's somebody else's, and he just doesn't want to have to... He doesn't like that because he also doesn't respect this dude. And I think that's more of the bigger narrative because he feels like he's the alpha because he's got the cool shop and he is the one that should be the CEO of Encom and he should have the girl and he should have this. So that, like, she's not really a person to him because, like, we don't ever get, like, any sort of romantic inkling from her.
From her
least,
end,
right?
yeah.
And she's just kind of like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. But, like, she's just another thing that was taken from him.
Yes.
And that's how she's treated. That's how he treats her.
So it's just objectification.
Yes.
Yeah. I almost didn't believe what was happening at the end. I kind of had to rewind it when she kissed him. I was like, did I miss something? Because that feels so just like, why? And it's like, even if Tron had just died, and then she's dead and gets brought back to life, and she's like, oh, my life, but also like, okay, sure. And then like, mwah. And then he's like, I'm going to go save the world. And like dives into the thing. And then afterwards it's like, and just like, yeah, I thought that was just the weirdest little ending at all. And then he's just like, I'm back in the real world. I have proof for my games.
Yeah, she's just objectified in this whole film. And she's meant to be a trophy. And women, they're just there to sacrifice themselves and let the men use them so that way they can be the hero. The men can be the hero. Yeah. Because truly, Tron couldn't get to where he was going to go without her. Flynn never would have been able to do any of this stuff without her. She is the plot point that carries the movie forward because otherwise they'd be still at that fucking Mercury Lake chilling, right?
Yeah.
Infinite power! But like, she's the only thing that moves the plot forward at that point.
True. Yeah, she is the only thing that's leading them.
You just brought up the ending of the movie, which is super fucking abrupt.
Yeah, it happens out of nowhere.
He gets out of the digital world, he gets a fax from the MCP, I guess, or something, and then cut to daytime in a helicopter. Hello, programs, credits. Like, right the fuck away.
Truly.
And the way that ends, for me, we're in the digital world the entire movie. Other than the first maybe 20 minutes, we're just thrown into this digital world. We form these relationships with these characters, and we have all these plot points of MCP and Stark and Yori and all them. But then we come out of it, and all that results from all this inner turmoil, all this war, all this protest, all this revolution in the digital world is that Kevin Flynn gets his vindication.
Yeah.
Of, oh yeah, Dillinger stole your games, so you're good now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's his whole motive the entire time,
yeah, and
right?
that's all that happens.
So let's talk about Flynn now. So we've already established that he is like the godfather of all tech bros, and his whole motive, everybody else's motive in this thing is like justice or whatever. His whole motive is he wants his proof that he did this because people don't believe him.
He needs
right?
personal vindication.
Yeah. Yes. Well, but not just personal vindication. He needs everybody to fucking know what he did. Because it's not enough that he knows, and it's not enough, like, he just feels like the world wronged him and stuff like that. So he's trying to prove to everybody, look, I'm important. Look, I'm a fucking badass. You should love me. Mm-hmm. And...
Which is what he craves, given that his fake rock star status while he's playing Star Fox or whatever the fuck he's playing.
Yeah, which was just like that made no sense to me.
He just gets his vindication, and then, okay, that's all we need. The story's over. Like, the story doesn't matter beyond Kevin Flynn getting what he wants.
And they also don't talk a whole lot about, like, because the fax is just so matter of fact, like, here's your proof. Bye-bye.
Yeah, clearance one,
like, bye.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that works, because
that's
why he was there, but, like, who... Okay...
Well, and the whole reason that we're supposed to care about this as the audience, too, is, like, because the MCP is now trying to take over the world, right? Because he's dominated the digital world. Cool. You humans aren't efficient. I'm going to make you efficient. It's also really interesting that the AI is using the user, right?
Oh, you're talking about
the
Dillinger?
MCP? Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, Dillinger also tries to pretend like he still has control, like his password is master. You know, and he pretends that he could go home, and that, like, his whole life is based on these lies, but he still pretends like, oh no, it's fine, like, this is never going to happen because I'm the user, when he's really not. I thought that was really interesting.
Well, because MCP, the Master Control Program, is just, that whole universe they set up in the digital world is just not even a poorly veiled, it just literally is fascism. Like, look at all the metaphors we have for Nazis and fascism and totalitarian government of, like,
I was even going to say like uprising of serfdom in a feudal system, right?
Yeah, like any kind of
it's all that's exactly what it
any
felt
kind of
like.
dictatorship or anything where there's one ruler at the top and everybody else gets shit on below. Like that's what the whole thing is.
Yeah.
Like there's even scenes of like tanks roaming the streets when Tron and the boys escape.
Oh, those red tanks?
Yeah, tanks are roaming the streets
Yeah.
are just like looking for them. That's extremely like occupation era type visuals.
Totally.
So that's the way they make him evil, right? Is because the way that you can relate evil to American audiences, especially in the 80s during the Cold War, is this idea of totalitarian tanks and Big Brother's watching, because this is right around that time of the book 1984, which was written before 84, but still, it's always the idea of that, someone's in control and you're not in control of yourself and someone's watching, and that's how you're supposed to scare American audiences for this movie of, look, it's the bad guys, you can tell because they want to control you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't conform, then you're going to be killed.
Yeah.
And if you don't do what this person says, then you're gone. And so it's interesting that the MCP is bringing that into the real world. And like the Dillinger guide, he never once asks anybody for help. He never once like tries to just fucking unplug the thing. Right?
Yeah. I was going to say, have you tried unplugging it and plugging it back in? Yeah. Maybe that'll fix it.
But so that's supposed to be our reason as the audience for wanting to see Tron and Flynn succeed.
Yeah.
But the movie, even at the end, doesn't really give us any of that satisfaction.
Exactly.
It is just because Flynn is vindicated, so that's resolution.
He is selfish, he is wrong, he is right, he swears he's right.
Did you look up the lyrics to
Swear
Vindicated?
he knew it all along. No, I didn't. I just sing this song in my head all the time for some wacky reason. Anyways,
But
yes,
you're right about that, because the resolution of the movie for us, the audience, is, oh, Flynn is vindicated. As far as what happens to the grid, to the digital world, all we see is like a bunch of towers start lighting up, and
The
Tron
internet.
goes,
Oh!
they're all talking to each other. Like, is that what we were trying to save?
Yeah, is that the
Did
deal?
we do it? Did we invented the internet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, cool, I guess. There's not really a lot of like description there of what happens to them.
Well,
Yeah.
but like I think maybe because that comparison, like you were saying, is so in your face, right? With
Oh, yeah.
like fascism, totalitarianism. It's just kind of like once the bad guy is defeated, like you just think, okay, great, everything is wonderful. There's no falling action because now it's a utopia again.
Yeah.
Because like that's what we need to believe, or that's what they wanted. Like it's just the easiest way out, I guess.
For sure.
Is a better way to put that.
Yeah, narratively, I mean, it's I mean, I don't want to like. Well, I guess I will. For such a simple story, for such a simple structure of narrative, right? For like hero's journey, vindication, all of that stuff is being like the main plot points here. A happy ending makes sense. Like a nice little neat bow is just like, oh, he did it. Yay, good for him. He's gonna go and live his beautiful life happily ever after.
And his cool helicopter.
In his cool helicopter. And he lives in an arcade and like hangs out with cool kids and wears t-shirts. Look at him. You know.
Well, and then also too, like it's something to note that the other film does too is the whole film we do not see daylight. Everything is dark. It's all like bluish, blacks, grays, all of that. Even in the real world, right? The only time that we see the sunlight is at that very last shot in the film. That's it.
Oh yeah.
Because it's
everything's okay now.
It's a new day,
It's a new
and
dawn.
now the veil has been lifted, and evil no longer looms.
Evil's
But-
nighttime. Goodness is daytime.
Ugh.
I do have something to say. They said something in here, or in the movie, in this book, in this movie. I feel like they were trying to set up some sort of narrative Wozniak-Jobs dynamic.
Oh, okay. Like what?
So he says very clearly, he's like, we're no longer in that garage. He's like, well, I wish we were back in that garage. He's like, that can be arranged. As sort of a way to, like, talk about possibly the falling out of Wozniak in that whole dynamic. And I know that was sort of, like, kind of-ish during this time. I don't know exactly the timeline for it, but it seems like...
Oh, you're talking about Dillinger talking to the old man.
Dillinger talking to the old...
Yeah, the old man who started it all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which would have been, like, sort of, he's Wozniak than the other guy, you know what I mean? But I feel like the back in that garage is sort of a very clear... maybe it's a hindsight thing for us now, knowing that, like, that's, like, one of the biggest companies in the world, if not the biggest, right? But...
I know that they did have like tech people involved with the writing of this film to try to like get it a little bit.
Yeah, and then I think also just like with all the effects too, because didn't they have to color over every frame?
Yeah, so they for when we were in the digital world, it was shot in black and white, and then animators went back in and colored every frame.
Yeah,
and they were snubbed for the Academy Awards.
Yes, they were,
because they were like, you can't use computers, that's cheating, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of animators, like, it was like everybody was up in arms because they're like, this is cheating and, you know, like, this is going to replace animators, which it did, like, 20 years later, right?
Yeah.
It's just, well, it didn't really replace them. It just, it evolved animation as we know it, right? Mm-hmm. And this film inspired John Lasseter, who was working at Disney at the time, to create Pixar. He saw that and he's like, cool, John Lasseter is a fucking creep. Take it from me. But
we're not endorsing him.
No.
We're simply stating facts.
I absolutely do not endorse him. But yeah, so like, I mean, the things that this film and the technology and what it did at the time, it was kind of like a show of things to come, I think. And it kind of like pushed things a little bit forward. And Disney also didn't know who this movie was going to be for when they released it.
Yeah.
There was like, how do we market this? What do we do? And Playboy tried to like come up and they were like, hey, Disney, so I know you don't know who this is for, but we'll go ahead and we'll do like, you know, an issue. We'll do like a thing. And so they were going to have models like posing with circuit boards and stuff. And Disney was like,
that's
nothing.
Sick.
Isn't it?
That would, oh my God. What? Okay. What a collector's piece that would have been. The Tron issue of Playboy.
Oh, man.
Oh.
But before we go back into like themes of the movie, I want to say how cool it is that fucking Wendy Carlos did the music for this. So I took digital recording classes. Wendy Carlos is the person that did Switched on Bach. You know when Moog was first coming out with their synths and everything? She was the person that like did Switched on Bach, which was like one of the first big giant electronic music things.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's like super, 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 super famous, right? And she
I'm just like so subculture. I just like don't even know what that is.
Oh man, it's so cool. And she's like a badass. Like this woman was like, oh yeah, we're gonna make music digitally now with a keyboard and stuff like that. Cool, I got this. And that's when you had to use like patch cables and shit for all that stuff.
Fuck.
So like this badass was like going here and playing Bach while she was like doing the patch cable thing, and oh man, so cool.
That's really cool.
She also went on to do like the music for Clockwork Orange and The Shining and stuff like that too. But so like in this movie, she was the one that did all of the keyboards for all of this. And they also, like, along with, like, an orchestra and things like that. So it's really cool. I didn't realize that she was a part of this. But Wendy Carlos is a fucking badass. And that makes me even happier that she was a part of this.
That's so cool.
So she's the original Daft Punk.
She is the original Daft Punk, yes. So, like...
I think that's musical canon.
Yeah, I think that's official now.
I want to talk a little bit more about the environment in the totalitarian society inside of the MCP, or inside of the grid.
The grid.
The grid. Where I thought it was super interesting because the way that they navigated the world, right? So, like, the MCP and his goons were, like, just so big and so massive and so arrogant. Like, arrogance was their downfall, essentially. Where they were like, nothing can get by us. And then the resistance dudes, and I'm just going to call it Tron and the Boys. Tron and the Boys.
Yeah.
They literally escape through a crack in the code.
Yeah.
And then the tanks and all this other stuff is too big to follow them. And, like, a big way that they rule is by just seeming massive and seeming, like, overwhelming and seeming like there's no way out. But really, like, when it comes to, like, resistance and stuff like that, that's kind of what you do, right? You find cracks in the system and you kind of exploit them. So that's how they get around. And then even when, like, later on they find a couple of people that are hanging out, like, you know, or a couple of programs that are just chilling, whatever, right? None of the programs look at them. They don't acknowledge them, right? Because in this society, if you so much as look at these people or, like, say, like, hey, how's it going? You could be a sympathizer and you could be deleted for that, right? So everybody's just kind of, like, focusing on themselves or on their function because they don't want to be corrupted, or they don't want to be perceived as helping Tron and the Boys, helping the resistance, helping to anger the MCP.
Yeah, which goes directly back into your point about totalitarian governments, or like, sort of like that idea, and especially if we're talking directly about like the Holocaust and that kind of like Nazi Germany, where it's like if you're a sympathizer, it's almost just as bad as being the victims in this case. So like that. I think that just adds more credence to the idea that the shaping of this story and this narrative was a lot to do with stuff like that, or with moments in sort of the history of people that.
And I think that it's also just super great that there's like one throwaway line where they talk about how the MCP started as a chess program. So started small, started from this tiny thing, and then just got more and more power, and, you know, like one thing led to another. And even though it was this small thing, it became this big, giant, overwhelming thing.
Yeah.
And that's how ideology starts, right? And that's how these types of movements and things like that, it starts with just one person. And if nobody ever questions them or ever, like, you know, tries to, like, engage with them, then this is just kind of what happens.
It's fascist dictatorship, like the growth of it, and then it's also the sort of complicit, well, that's just the way it is, of people who don't, like, question things, right? And so it's like that, becoming a complicit bystander in situations like this. It's essentially being like, well, no, that's the law, so I can't do anything about it. It's like, no. That's why we talk about a lot, like, questioning your own place in this world and questioning what is and is not correct, right? Because with a lot of these stories, so much intention is behind it. So when we see these, like, shitty archetypes or these shitty narratives, like just putting women down, putting white men in the patriarchal structure up above all else, it's like these are intentional choices, right? And so it's the same thing about being like, we need to question our place in this world in the same way. So
yeah, the movie, there's a quick scene where when the tanks are pursuing Tron and the boys, we see inside the tank, and the guys driving the tank are in blue. Their stuff is blue, the light-up stuff, which we find out later means that they're not corrupted. The scene where Flynn sucks up the red for his costume because he becomes corrupted or whatever. So presumably blue is the good guys and red is the bad guys. But the guys in the red tank who are looking for Tron and the boys are blue, implying there's some kind of system here where, like, oh, if you come to our side and play for our team and hunt your own kind, you're good, you're taken care of.
Well, but that's also very true of the people in the games and stuff like that too, right? Like, as long as you play by the rules, you will not be removed. You will not be deleted. But the second that you go against that is when there's issues and when they start making it more difficult for you.
Right, but the rules are set by the MCP, so the rules are not good. There's the Sark makes the announcement when Flynn goes to the games that if you forsake what you believe in, you can join the elite warriors.
Exactly.
But if you still believe in this bullshit user deity, weird religious analogy we're having in this movie, then you're going to be deleted or whatever. So you have to play by the rules, but the rules are our rules that we set, which suck.
And within those rules, we'll probably kill you anyway.
Most likely, yeah.
Well, and then the people that are problems, like their chance to redeem themselves is maybe to go to the games, right? Or they think that they have the chance to redeem themselves. But really, we hear the MCP say, I want him to think that he's going to win, and then I want him to be obliterated. Because, again, the arrogance of the MCP is like, I want this person to have a glimmer of hope before he's utterly destroyed.
Yeah.
And that is, like, the most evil. Because, like, you could just often be done with it, and also just so arrogant. Like, how many movies would, like, we not have if they just killed the person?
Just killed the guy? Yeah.
Instead of, like, went after vengeance or, like, tried to, like, just make somebody suffer. Like, that is so fucking arrogant. Just, if you're gonna do it, just off somebody.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and it is a interesting way to set it up. I also want to point out that, like, the game that they play was essentially just highlight but Pong.
Yeah, it's literally highlight. I said the same thing.
With the highlight paddles, or like what do you call they're not paddles, they're like scythe scoops.
The tools, highlight tools.
The highlight tools. Yeah, what you use to play the game highlight. And I was just like, oh, that's interesting. Like, what an interesting choice to make, because I guess, like, that's a relatively unknown sport to the West. So I guess it would be like, ooh, what is this interesting thing that I've
how
never
exotic
seen before?
this.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
Well, and that's actually, I think that's a nod to Pong, for sure, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's actually what inspired this entire film.
What's Pong?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Pong is what inspired the Tron universe.
I love it.
Little did you know.
I didn't know. So, I have a thing that I was very consistent in my notes. This movie came out in 1982. A New Hope came out in 1977, and The Empire Strikes Back came out in 1980. This movie was Disney trying to do Star Wars before they ever had Star Wars. This movie is such a Star Wars clone in a lot of the plot points and a lot of the plot elements and a lot of the design of the characters and a lot of the battles. Like, obviously, you already said Flynn is shitty discount Han Solo.
Yeah.
Like, he's the cool, scruffy nerf herder who even talks to himself when he flies, like Han Solo does. Like, come on, baby, hold together, right, when he's flying the thing that he finds. He gets in disguise in the enemy's costume to break into the enemy fortress. Han Solo dresses up like a stormtrooper. The guys who are trying to shoot them are in like those black kind of Vader-esque helmets that run the Death Star. The Sark and the boys fly around in literally like an Imperial starship. Like
Yori's also a badass that saves Tron multiple times.
Yeah, like...
Also, even when, who's the main guy to the MC...
Sark,
yeah. When he's not doing what the computer's saying, he gets the Sith grip.
Yeah, he gets the shock.
Yeah.
When we actually see MCP, he's just a big giant face, which like the Emperor was the hologram, and everybody, after when that movie first came out, people thought he was like a giant, just a face and not a person in a hologram.
Yeah.
By the way, the face of MCP was later used in South Park as the face of Moses. Whenever they have Moses in an episode, it's the big MCP face, which is really weird.
Cute.
But yeah, there are so many things that line up of me thinking like, oh, that's Star Wars, that's Star Wars, that's Star Wars. This was Disney trying to get on the Star Wars game before they ever realized they were going to.
Yeah.
Like, this was their Disney presents Star Wars long before Disney actually presented Star Wars.
Well, and that's kind of like the era where we had like a lot of clones too, a lot of clone films, or like, oh, this did well, so let's take some of this and let's do our own version.
Yeah.
You know?
Capitalizing on the same sort of tropes and same sort of narratives, yeah.
Oh yeah, Star Wars is not original by any means in its tropes. Like,
what?
They're tropes for a reason. But like...
You take that back.
What do you mean?
Canceled.
Holy trilogy, I know. But like the timing of it, especially when I was watching it, I was like, I wondered. I can remember what year it came out, so I was like, I had to look it up, and then it's 2 years after Empire. Like, holy shit, they wanted a piece of that pie real bad.
Yeah,
and then 30 years later, they
or
got
even
it.
if they didn't want a piece of the pie, I think it was the person that wrote this was just super fucking into it. Right? It's like, what if it was Star Wars, but like. In the computer.
Instead of space.
What?
Yeah.
The other unknown frontier.
Yeah, instead of going out to space, they went into computers. Like, other than that, that's what it is. It's inner Star Wars instead of outer Star Wars.
It's essentially a Bug's Life because we went micro instead of macro.
Basically, it's Star Wars meets a Bug's Life equals Tron.
Tron is a Bug's Life. That is canon. That is true. That is fact. I mean, if we're talking about it, Tron did inspire Pixar. Pixar created Bug's Life.
There it is.
Transitive property dictates that, in fact...
That is airtight.
That is science.
So there's two other things that I want to talk about before we leave.
Let's do it.
The first one is I want to talk about how the programs take on the physical characteristics of their users and kind of what that looks like what that means, right? Because, we've already kind of discussed Alan being a cop.
And a turd.
We've talked about how Laura
and Yori.
Yeah!
Lori.
Oh, okay. How, they're both kind of badasses. But I think it's also interesting that, and Dillinger and what's-his-face, they're both shits, right?
Sark,
yeah. But isn't it interesting that Flynn's program is just offed right away?
Clue, you mean?
Because he can't survive there because he gets found out immediately?
Yeah, the first time we ever see Flynn in the movie is before his whole arcade rock star entrance. He's trying to hack the system and whatever people thought hacking was in the 80s. His representation in the digital world is Clue, and Clue, in less than 5 minutes, gets found and smashed and caught and just never stood a chance.
So it's interesting that he, as the user, was able to do it, but through a lot of manipulation, right? He starts off being like, oh, I'm just a program. You don't know. And later on is oh, well, I'm actually a user, guys. Mm-hmm. But a big part of this is as a user, you have to think of what hacking is, right? You have to pretend you're this person, or you need to find backdoors or find these ways to manipulate the data or manipulate, make the computer think you're somebody you're not. Or, in order to get access to X, Y, and Z. And that's essentially what Flynn does when he gets inside of the MCP.
What does it mean to have an avatar?
Yeah, okay, so that's kind of... So your avatar, is it a more true version of you?
I think it's a less true version of you, because I think in the same way that we've developed within technology and creating these sort of online personas, your Instagram page is an avatar for yourself, but it's a curated version of that avatar that you show to the world.
Yeah.
In chat rooms, the same way, you're not seen, you're only heard, so it's how you want to present yourself, and you get to wear different costumes, so you're essentially doing internet drag like in all these different places, and you're doing different looks for all these different places because you want to not only impress or show yourself in this particular way to the group that you're talking to, but that fluctuation changes depending on what group chat you're in and also what platform you're on and all that stuff. So yeah, I think it is a less true version, and I think why we're seeing the rigidity of the cop character is because it's just a very stark, like, this and that, and he's stoic. Because that's who he
nuanced.
Wants. It's not nuanced at all. You're not getting this sort of intersectional ways that we exist mentally and physically, like all of the weird things and emotions. It's just very cut and dried. This is how I want to represent myself, and that's it. Bye.
I think that is so fucking smart. Damn, you just cracked that shit.
Is that right?
That's
what it sounds like.
No, yeah. Because now that you're saying that, when you're saying that about like how Instagram is like a curated avatar of ourselves in this digital world, I feel like the programs are representations of how the people kind of maybe wish they could be. Yeah. Like, Yori is much more active than Laura. Mm-hmm. Tron is more of a tough guy than Alan. Alan in the real world is kind of a sniveling shit of like, oh, well, we're hanging out with your ex-boyfriend and I'm jealous about it and I'm going to be mad about it in the corner. Yeah. But then Tron's like, I am a hero. It's like how they see themselves. They're representations. They're literally avatars. It's representations of how they wish they could be. Yeah. Fucking shitty old Wizard of Oz man is literally the gatekeeper of the fortress. Sark is this great, maybe not great, but he's this warrior who lords over the land. And then Flynn is just still fucking discount Han Solo. Yeah. But yeah, it's representations of how they wish they could be. And I think that's not a new concept, I think, in the 80s, but it's weird that, I mean, thinking about video games are sometimes a power fantasy. Mm-hmm. And when you get these games where you can create your own characters, either you create something fucking ridiculous to be funny, or you like to create something that like is kind of like, oh yeah, I'm a cool wizard because I wish I could do fireball in real life kind of thing. And this movie kind of captured that kind of early on, especially in the video game stage and computer program stage. Yeah, and what's also interesting is seeing the way that these avatars essentially react to knowing that Flynn's a user as opposed to a program, right? Oh, he's God. Yeah, he's their God, and that's the whole subplot of like the deity situation, right? Right. But it is interesting to see that the avatar's version response to the user as opposed to the user response to the avatar or the creation of the avatar. Mm-hmm. I thought that was cool. I don't know. I feel like there's... Yeah, like Alan talking to Flynn, Alan's like, oh, you're a shit. But then Tron talking to Flynn is like, huh? Yeah. Holy shit. Yeah. 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 What did you want to end on? So I want to end on something, the concept that the grass is always greener on the other side. Okay. Because there's a couple of times where they say, like, you know, I think even in the end, Flynn is like, on the other side of the screen, it all looks so easy. And once he's there, this is actually really tough. We always wish, and going back to the Avatar thing, like, we always want something that we don't have or to be somebody that we're not. And I think that that's something that carries through into the next film for sure. And I think that it's really interesting that the movie kind of ended on that, because just because something is different doesn't mean that it is less difficult or less complicated or it's not as hard as it seems. Yeah. And it's also like, you're talking about a matter of perspective. Like, talking about how it's sort of the conversation of like, you want what you can't have, but then once you get it, you want something else. Like the grass is always greener thing. And like, even then when that conversation gets posed as not necessarily a question, but more of just like it must be so easy for you users, right? And then he's like, well, honestly, it kind of is exactly like this. Like, you go into it with a certain expectation, but then when you get somewhere else, it's not what you expected, but you work through it and you figure it out. Yeah. So he's just saying like, what you're doing, that's what we do. We're all just like the same, essentially. Struggles suck. We're all going to struggle. End of story, you know? Yeah. The idea that even in the digital space, he's still human kind of thing. Yes, like, exactly. And this is like representative of the human struggle. Yeah. Because Tron tells him what you're referring to is Tron's like, oh, well, don't you always operate according to a plan? That's right. And Flynn's like, what the fuck are you talking about? No. Yeah, never. But, and then I think that's cool because then or like, at least not necessarily cool, but just interesting that he's essentially posing that they're more human than they give themselves credit for, even though they're not human at all. But just the idea of wanting something more, the idea of hope itself could even be argued that that's incredibly human. The fact that they're hoping anything is a very human thing to do, as opposed to just being like expectations and this. And it's like, y'all have it so easy, but it's like, no, we're all doing the same shit. We're all in this together, we're all a mess. We're hashtag High School Musical. We're all in this together. Oh my gosh. We're now going to start talking about Tron Legacy from the year 2010.
So Old Man Flynn capitalizes on his experiences in the grid, has a kid, and, in 1989, vanishes without a trace, leaving behind a son, a motorcycle, and a Fortune 500 company. His son Sam grows up a sad rich boy and is one day informed that his daddy might still be alive in the digital world.
Sam goes to his father's old arcade, finds his secret office, and gets sucked into the grid. He is imprisoned and eventually gets saved by Cora, a mysterious digital woman who leads him back to his daddy. Hijinks ensue.
And a line. So yeah, we are on Tron Legacy.
The legacy of Tron. Who isn't even, fuck this, he's not even in this movie. He's like in this movie for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
He's in the movie, but they never show him. Because they didn't want to do that weird digital thing to the actor's face they did to Jeff Bridges, I guess. I don't know.
That was really jarring and really weird,
Yeah.
and it's called Tron Legacy, and then when we see Tron, he no longer fights for the user, he fights for the clueser. Ha ha ha.
Oof.
Big joke.
What a
Big one.
Are you still laughing?
You guys aren't even going to give me that one?
Okay.
No,
my
you take
God.
it. I know,
Oh my God.
I mock,
Wow.
but I do give also.
Should we get all our jokes out right away?
I didn't even that was just like off the cuff. I didn't even...
No, that was actually...
If you
I
want
didn't even plan that, guys. Like,
if you want to get all our jokes out,
jokes.
I've got jokes if you want to just get them all out
I
at the
got
beginning.
shit.
Do it. What's your joke?
So, when Flynn talks about that there was a coup, there was a clue coup.
Aw.
That's my joke.
I wish there was a clock in the room so it would be a clue clock.
Jesus.
So, this movie was something. I want to go on record first and foremost, and I want to tell you all how much I hate our lead character. I don't like him at all.
Wait,
Talking
the
about Sam.
actor or
Sam.
the character himself?
I don't know the actor, the character himself. The character...
Because I hated him too.
was so shitty. Like, we're supposed to start to empathize with him because he's like a bad boy and he lost his dad, and we're like, oh, he lost his dad, so he's like, whatever. He is such a little brat. Like, he's such an entitled piece of shit, and like, when he gets arrested and goes to jail, it's like, no biggie. It's like, oh wow, white privilege sure is working well with you, isn't it? Like, no sweat off my back. He's also rich and like, not a care in the world.
And has his like shitty apartment, but it's like built specifically for him, like under the dock somewhere. Like, it's like his little bat cave. He wants so hard to be Batman because Batman also lost his parents when he was a kid, right? And I think that's who he idolized. He idolized Daddy Flynn and Daddy Batman.
Yes, which is perfect because given previous circumstance and conversation with straight white male culture, all straight white men generally want to be Batman, and I think that he is the physical embodiment and manifestation narratively of that type of archetypal character, and the tropes all wrapped up in it, because that house is what you would call in a straight world a man cave, right? That was just like, look at my motorcycle, and I'm a bachelor, but my dog's cool, so I'm sensitive, and you're just like my dad's friend, so
and I
blah.
rob from the rich and give to the poor.
Yeah,
and also, like, he's the fucking majority owner of this Fortune 500 company, and he doesn't want to get involved because it's too much responsibility, but he will totally fuck over his own company. Like, so he just doesn't want to put his own face out there because he's a sad little boy who has daddy issues, and just like Batman. And he probably sits in his little bat cave and watches Batman all the time and practices parkour.
Yes.
So related to my previous movie argument, Tron Legacy. What happened?
No, that was the best way to go into it. Just like,
Well, no, it's
so
because I was listening so intently to your wonderful points. Tron Legacy came out in 2010. Batman Begins came out in 2005. The Dark Knight came out in 2008. So the same way that original Tron was Disney's Star Wars, I think this was Disney's Batman. I picked up on a few of those, like the same things you guys are talking about, of like, he's supposed to be our Bruce Wayne, our sympathetic, like, brooding hero, and then Cora's Robin, I guess, who like saves his ass but doesn't get any of the credit kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, that vibe of it's more gritty this time around, and like things are darker, and there's a seedy underbelly, and like, oh, this is Batman. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool, you're making Batman now.
Well, yeah, and that was like during the whole time when they were doing all these reboots, and they were doing them for the nostalgia factor. It was like, oh man, it's Tron. But what if it was dark?
Yeah.
Like,
They had
saw
karate
blood.
fights.
And they try, like, in an effort to try to make more nuanced characters, they just make them more complicated, but they don't actually flesh out the character themselves. So, like, Sam has no conflict. His whole thing is that he has daddy issues. Like you were saying, he has hella money, right? He goes to prison to jail, and he's like, yeah, whatever, I'm out. And he has the money to go to therapy, and he just won't fucking go to therapy to talk about this shit with anybody, right?
Well, 'cause that would be
Anybody
admitting
that tries
weakness.
to help him...
Yeah.
Anybody that tries to help him, he's like, no. Like, he pushes them away. Even, like, Alan, who he's talking about, like, sitting there doing his homework with him and stuff like that, right? Like, he just fucking pushes him away because he wants to be a sad, sorry little boy.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm the owner of this company. I'm like, that really bothers me because he could really make people's lives better. And instead of, like, doing that, he doesn't have to do it publicly, but he does it in his own terms. And it's so shitty and so boring, and he's just so boring. He had no struggle. He's what is it, like the Mary Sue equivalent?
Oh, yeah.
Gary Stu. Everything that he tries, he doesn't fail at. He is a great coder. He's, like, as good, if not better, than his dad. He knows fucking parkour and all these sweet stunt moves. He's a badass on a motorcycle who fixes them up, too. Like, he literally has no struggle. Everything is so easy to him. Even in the digital world, when he's just there, he's like, okay, cool, I got this. Yeah, what up?
And the thing about that I noticed with this new viewing was there's no reason for it. There's no explanation.
No.
Where Flynn is good at the grid games because he is a video game designer and he plays video games. He made this world. Sam Flynn is good at everything. He can do parkour. He can hack. He can ride motorcycles, like you guys were saying. He's really good at
He can base jump.
Yeah,
he knows how to skydive.
He can play Death Frisbee, whatever the fuck that game is. He's so good at everything. And there's literally no explanation for it because all we know about him is that he's a guy without a job who lives in a man cave. Mm-hmm. So
with unlimited money,
right? Like, there's no reason why he should be good at all this stuff, and he just excels at everything without any explanation.
It's setting that's like literally setting the stage for this narrative, which was I was having such a hard time at the beginning of it, and then he even makes some sort of comment when he gets out of jail. He's like, "Will you just let me sleep? I smell like jail." Like, as such a throwaway, oh, God, it was such an inconveniencing for me to go to jail, and I'm like an hour?
5 minutes?
Yeah.
And then he just goes, and is like,
impounded, pays for his motorcycle, and he's back at home, and he's like, all in a day's work, and you're like, God, there was so much dismissal of, like, everything that's happened thus far, and he's just a spoiled brat of a hero, and it's so... I thought they were going to do something later where, like, he gets better, and he doesn't, and I'm like, ugh... We supposed to like this asshole?
Well, and, like, his whole, like, conflict resolution, right? Because the only time he has a hard time is, like, with talking to his daddy or impressing his daddy. Like, he still wants his daddy's approval, right? Like, you're a fucking man. You need to deal with your emotions. You need to cry.
Yeah. You need to cry. He's Kyle. He's fucking Kyle, and he needs to figure it out. Because, like, it's literally one of those things, like, as kids, well, what'd your dad say? What are you talking about my dad? My dad's not here. It's like, oh, I just touched something. There is something going on here, and you don't want to talk about it, and I'm sorry that you can't talk about it, but it is not cute, and it's also not subtle. So... It's
just, like...
He's the worst. He's the fucking worst.
He's so boring.
He's so boring.
And even when he meets his dad, like, and he's, like, speaking of Untitled, like, they're, like, having their one bonding moment where, like, they're on the solar train thing to go to the center of everything, right? And he's like, so what's it like out there, right? Like, Daddy Flynn is like, what's going on, right? Yeah. And he's like, oh, we have Wi-Fi. What's that? Wireless interlinking. And, like...
That's what we all call it.
Yeah,
wireless
they're digital devices? Huh, I thought of that. Sure, Dad, whatever. But then, like, he goes on to list more things, and he's listing the problems, right? He's like, he talks about the ice caps melting and the war in Iran, or, like, in the Middle East. And then he says online dating, and I'm like, why is this so even, goofy. Like, why?
And that's all the problems we have.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Well...
And it's just so nonchalant, too. Like, war in the Middle East, online dating... What a fucking privileged white boy.
Something else he says in that same conversation, he goes, rich getting richer, poor getting poorer. Hey, 1%, that's you. You are doing that. Yeah. You are causing that problem.
Yeah.
Like, it's cool that you're Robin Hood, but also you are still the biggest shareholder of this company. Even if you're not 1%, you're for sure a millionaire.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, income inequality, it sure sucks. Anyway, I'm rich, so I don't really care, though.
Yeah.
JK, LOL.
I'm gonna go do some crimes because I can get away with it and it's not a problem. Who cares? And it's not my skin color. Don't worry about that. Like, stop.
Yeah,
Shut up. Go to bed.
That's he's so unaware of his own status in that scene.
Yeah.
Of like, yeah, man, it sucks out there, even though it's me doing it.
Yeah. It
was not a well-written scene. And the only thing that sucks for him is his daddy disappeared. Also, like, if the police or, like, just anybody that knew him had actually done a sweep of that arcade, they would have been able to find where he was at. Like, there's no way that Sam went in there and was like, oh, here's some markings on the thing. Especially because at this point in time, right? Like, we have to think about, it's not just, like, a person that's gone missing, right? It is a white man who is very rich and very well off and
very famous.
And super famous. So, literally, he, like, the quarter drops and he was like, oh, here, there's a thing behind this. There was no locking mechanism for it. There was no barriers other than a false wall to get to his fucking lab.
But to be fully fair, though, he is, again, good at literally everything. So he is definitely the best cop in the city. Best detective, rather.
Like Batman.
Like Batman.
Yeah.
Again, he is also the very same. The very same. That is who he is. Also, when he goes to the arcade, I hated it so much because it gave me so much anxiety that he's in this deserted part of town. He's just going to turn on all the lights, all the music. It's super loud. He left the door open and then just is like wandering, like not a care in the world. Like, shut the fucking door. Like, just shut the door. What are you doing? Like,
and
I'm just so...
At the end, then... everything is kind of off, or it stopped, or like, and nobody even wandered in. His motorcycle's still out there.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. The whole sequence of the arcade, because they get the page from the number, and Alan says, "Well, that number's been disconnected for 20 years or whatever." So the phone doesn't work anymore. We've disconnected the phone, but we still pay the power bill apparently because everything comes on right the fuck away,
immediately.
Jukebox and everything. It hasn't been cleared out. It hasn't been, no one broke in and took these extremely valuable old arcade machines. But also, my question was, why did it close? Because he disappeared. Like. Because he's this larger-than-life rock star motherfucker. Like, oh, our great hero, Flynn, the video game player, is gone. Can't go to the arcade anymore and worship him, I guess. So I guess arcades are done.
And also, this whole part of town is done.
Yeah.
Like, every other storefront's also going to close because
he disappeared.
Yeah.
Because we lost the Flynn Lebowski. I got it in.
No. And, oh my god, speaking of that is Jeff Bridges' whole character in this.
Yeah.
He's just like, even at a certain
Jeff
point,
Bridges.
he's like, you're ruining my like peace vibe or something, he says.
Yep.
Which was just so just like, oh man, I love it. I love it so much, and I do like the embracing of that, like, kind of those mannerisms, those sort of character pieces, but it was just like, man, he's just doing the dude.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I offer a slightly alternative take on Sam Flynn?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. So, he sucks. I'm not going to debate that fact. But the fact is that he was created, kind of stepping outside of the movie a little bit, I guess, which I know we're not really supposed to do, but he was created by writers, right? He was designed to be this way, purposely, in this movie. He is a millennial who doesn't work, who doesn't want to work, he's lazy, he's withdrawn, all these things, right? I kind of read this as sort of like anti-millennial storytelling, in that those shitty entitled motherfuckers over there, those millennials, they're ruining the arcade industry, apparently. They're ruining all these industries, and bland, don't they suck? This point of view that a lot of people who are older than millennials seem to have, of this very just negative, you're fucking everything up and you're making it weird, even though they fucked it up long before us, and boy, I can't wait till the boomers are gone. But, because then what happens? He goes into the grid, right? And what does he learn in the grid? He learns about traditional values, about family, about religion.
I didn't think about
he reconnects with these old conservative values, and then he comes out and he's like, well, now I'm ready to work, and now I'm ready to have responsibility because I met my daddy and I learned about myself and like all these things, where now he's valuable to society, because before, as a shitty millennial, he had no value. He sucked, right? And they make him suck on purpose, the writers of the movie. And yes, he does suck. I know that. I agree with you. But that's such a commentary, I think, on the way that people view us, of like, you just need to reconnect with old-timey values and we need to teach you what's right. That way you can shape up and ship up and be right and fly the way we want you to fly, kind of thing.
Wow.
That's how I read that interpretation of Sam.
Damn.
What a good take.
At first I wasn't really on board.
I know. He sucks. I know.
Yeah, like, I think you saw, like, the look I was giving you, like, okay. But then when, oh man, no, that's good.
That's actually a really good point. Like, because, and again, it goes, God, I don't even know what to say over here. That was so eloquent.
Like,
Thank you.
Daddy Flynn is, like, even, like, trying to teach Cora and stuff like that, patience and all this stuff.
And all these old books, like the classics.
Yeah. And can't we talk about shit that he didn't embody when he
at all?
There?
No,
at
but
all.
now that
At
he's
all.
old and conservative, now it's a value that he's always held dear.
But how did he get old and conservative? Like, because he wasn't that person when he got in there, right?
No, he just got money.
He was in the grid.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, so you think if the values of the grid were these things, those values became instilled in him because he existed in that place?
That's the only place that he would have learned all this.
Yeah.
I had that thought, too, of, like, in the first movie, he's just tech bro, right? He's poster boy tech bro. I'm really good at video games, and I hit on my ex-girlfriend, and I'm a super creep. But now, within a couple years, he's like, I'm going to change science. I'm going to change medicine. I'm going to change religion. I want to save humanity. Like, how the fuck did we get there?
Well,
yeah.
and the way that I read that was pretty immediately after he becomes, Rich Flynn. He gets a wife and impregnates her pretty much immediately, and then she dies. So what is usually a motivator for men to try to make the world a better place and to grow? It's usually a woman
sex.
Dying. Right? Or
the trope of you need to lose a woman to become a better man kind of thing.
Isn't that the woman in the fridge?
Oh, yeah, to kill him off as a way to have another character grow, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she doesn't even get a fucking name.
She doesn't get a name.
She gets one line of throwaway dialogue. Not even from Flynn or Sam, from the fucking news broadcasts that exist to give us all the exposition at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they never talk about her again.
Nope.
It's like, he's not mad that mommy died or anything.
Nope.
He's mad that daddy left.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't give a shit about mom.
Yeah. Doesn't mention her once. And I sort of wondered if it was Laura, because she's not around.
Same. I
for
googled that
Alan
shit, and it wasn't.
She's not around in this
Thank
movie
goodness.
at fucking all.
Yeah.
And not even Yori, her avatar, because he later tells Sam that me and Clue and Tron built this world together. Oh, what about the lady who built the fucking laser that lets you into this world at all? Oh, she's just gone? Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice
awesome.
job. Yeah. Way to go, guys.
Yeah, so that sucked.
That did suck. I'm still driven on that take. That was really, that's making me rethink the whole thing. I mean, if I were to still be analyzing this from the perspective or the way, my first impression of it when I was watching it, I wanted to bring up this idea of, the American abroad syndrome that he has going into the grid. Again, it's just playing off of all of his already established characteristics of being rich, of being entitled, of being I'm good at everything and I can do anything no matter what. But going into this place that he is completely unfamiliar with and then trying to explain to other characters how their world exists and how they exist and how they should be in their world.
Yeah.
It's like Americans going on trip anywhere that isn't America. It's essentially saying, no, speak my language and I'm also going to tell you how to do this. And it's like, ooh, oh my God, it's too much.
He's the living embodiment of the phrase, well, actually.
Well, actually, yeah, exactly. And even and it's towards these characters who are on the precipice of death. They're about to die in these games and somebody's like, why are you crying? And you're like, oh my God, go away. What's this guy's deal as he's getting stabbed? Okay.
Yeah. Well, and that's so interesting with the religious context that they kind of set up for Flynn being God, right? And then Sam being the son of God, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And also Flynn Lebowski, he's got these long robes and this Jesus hair and the whole thing, and he's holier than thou and patience and all of that. And
he's got his White Russians. He's doing great.
He really is, Yeah, that's even more troubling, taking that kind of stuff into context, too.
Yeah.
Ugh, gross. So, we've already talked about Flynn Jr. Let's talk about Flynn Sr.
Zen Flynn.
Zen Flynn.
Cool.
Yeah. We have so many names for him.
Zen Flynn, yeah.
I got jokes.
And you know how to use them. You guys get
He
that? ZZ Top?
becomes
Anybody? No, it's okay.
such a baby. Because his whole thing is he knows that he fucked up, but he won't admit it. And he's too scared to try to fix it. So literally there's a line in there where he says, the only way to win the game is not to play. So he just removes himself from all of these equations and just tries to pretend like it's not happening and it doesn't exist. And if he just is a good person on his own and doesn't deal with the horrible shit that he caused, then it's fine. And then nobody will remember. He'll be okay. Everything will be fine. Everything will go away.
And isn't that just boomers on any social issues
I was just about to say.
Isn't that the case, though? As long as I'm a good person, it doesn't matter. Because black people might be getting shot. How does that have to do with me? They probably did something wrong. Like,
Go to
girl.
bed. Go to bed.
Go to sleep.
That idea of he fucked this world up and then removes himself from it.
Exactly.
Boomers.
Exactly.
Like, we fucked everything up, but then, oh, well, we're okay. So it must be somebody else causing all these problems. Millennials or dangerous minorities, quote, quote.
Yeah.
Or, women who want to vote. You're like, fuck.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That is such a good point, though. And I'm so happy because that just gives full, big, rolling snowballs of credence to the idea that that's how this was written. Essentially, he is a millennial and he is a boomer, and it's like, go back to the classic ways, be conservative, like, that whole idea.
Yeah.
Ooh, that is so cool and rife with social shit, and I love it.
Yes.
Oh my god.
So, speaking of boomers and how they feel about things, can we talk about the role of women in this film?
Yes.
Let's talk about, the first woman in the film is just a throwaway, my mommy died thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or, like, it wasn't Flynn talking about it, it was the news. So, Cora is... Well, I guess she's not the first one we meet, but we'll talk about her and then we'll go back to Jem, because I think I want to discuss Jem, too.
Mm-hmm.
But Cora kind of, like, immediately has the hots for Flynn. As soon as she sees him, she's just like, hey, daddy. Like, hey, daddy's son, what's up? And she saves him, she's a badass, all of that, but Flynn Sr., Flynn Lebowski, is kind of like teaching her the old ways, as you say. And it's so interesting because, like you were saying, like, before, where, like, white people come in and they, like, oh, speak the way that we speak, learn our values, learn all of this. When Flynn talks about what she is, the ISOs, right? He's like, these are people that have unlimited knowledge, kind of referring to them as, like, I read it as almost like they're gods. They know so much, they're going to change the shape of reality, they're going to do all of this, like, and they just appeared, like, they just came out of nowhere, and they were, like, our answer, and then they're all killed, and she's the only one left. So, rather than helping her learn about her people and what happened, or trying to, like, say, like, okay, this is what we need to do to, like, take vengeance, or... Because he revered them so much, and it's like, there's this whole monologue about it. He's teaching her, he's making her read, like, The Old Man and the Sea, And, like, he's trying to play, like, this chess game with her and trying to do all this stuff, and he literally says to her, women are aggressive and men are patient, pretty much. Because he says that, Cora's talking to Sam, and she's like, your dad says that I'm too aggressive, I need to be more patient like him. But the whole time he's trying to tell her how to be, and she just wants to be a real person. But I feel like she's a really weak character because she's never allowed to have feelings or to think any other way than what this fucking boomer thinks, right? Like, now thinking about it like that, like, my whole thing was going to be like, man, she sucks and she's nothing and she's just good at karate or whatever. Like,
she is good at karate.
She is, yeah.
Well, it's also wild because, like, there's literal genocide and then followed by, instead of learning about her culture, colonialization of him embracing and instilling his own values on her. So literal genocide, literal colonialization. But then also within her character, they both make her the sort of like the infantilized daughter, but then simultaneously the sexy object of affection.
Yes.
Which is just that really fucking gross thing that guys love to do. They love to take the idea of a woman who knows nothing and be like, let me show you everything. Let me teach you everything. And also fall in love with me. And it's like, it's like taking the idea of objectification and like just propifying this human person into something that is both ownership, but also just like literal romantic and sexual slavery, but also I want to be your daddy and I want you to like be my daughter. Like, it's that weird that I don't even really know how to describe it apart from
that it's gross.
It's gross. Yeah. It's just infantilizing and it's also sexually objectifying. And it's just like, What?
And
they do it in such a really, like, literal way
But
here.
to save Zin Flynn, Daddy Flynn,
Yeah.
from being that kind of creeper, we have Sam to be the sexualized half of that. So we have I'm going to teach you things and you're going to be my daughter and you'll do what I say. And then we have the whole other character to come along and be like, oh, well, I'll be the one to, let's make out or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he's like, what's up, stepsister?
Yeah.
But okay,
Uncomfortable.
so the other thing too is while he's trying to like teach her his ways, like the colonialization of this, she admits she's withholding information from him, that he doesn't know everything.
Yeah.
Because she knows way more than he does, like about what's happening in the world. She knows that Flynn's son is there. He has no idea. He's just dreaming about Tron. He's just off in this, maybe everything will be okay.
Yeah.
And she's like, your son's here. I got him. I did this. Anytime that she has the knowledge of what's happening now, and Flynn is just stuck in yesterday.
She's the reimagining of Yori in that way. Of she knows her way around the world. She can kick ass. She'll get you where you need to go. But then when it's time for the men to talk, it's pure background.
Yeah.
Like, they don't even say who she is until like an hour and a half into the movie. She shows up to save Sam in her digital Batmobile, because this is Batman. It's the Tumbler from Dark Knight.
Yeah.
And then they go back to the apartment or whatever, the digital apartment. She just sits on the couch and says fucking nothing the entire time while Sam and Daddy talk. And then Daddy storms away to go meditate. And all Sam does is talk to Cora about Dad. She's a soundboard for them to talk to each other, like, through, kind of.
Because men don't know how to talk about their feelings.
And then, like, there's never a moment in the movie where all three of them are, like, having a conversation together. When she gets her arm de-rezzed or whatever and passes out, that's where they bond. And then as soon as she wakes up, Daddy goes, oh, I'm going to go meditate. So he's off the screen. So now Son and Cora can talk. And then she gets herself kidnapped for literally no reason at all. At fucking all. And Daddy Flynn goes, oh, well, she's removing herself from the equation. Why?
Wow.
Like, she doesn't have a plan on the inside. She's just there and she's captured for Sam to save later. Literally no reason for her to get captured other than we need her off the screen so Dad and Son can talk. There's not a single moment in the movie where all three of them are active at the same time and engaging each other about the plan or about what to do or about how shit sucks.
Yeah.
It's either a combination of two or three of them, or the other one's in the background, or just not there. It's fucking wild. Like, that blew me away so much about this movie rewatching it.
It was all fucked. And, like, even seeing the way that Sam interacts with her, like, the moments where she obviously knows the place. She knows everything. Again, she is the strongest person in this film. She's like, well, maybe we should do this. He's like, no, I got this. I have to save the day. And you're like, have you been here for, like, an hour? Haven't you? Like, you just showed up, like, an hour ago. But now you know how to save the world? This world you don't know?
Karate Death Frisbee.
Think about, like...
And also,
about what
I
you
hated
would
how
do.
he knew how to play that game.
Oh,
I
yeah.
hated that
Again,
so much.
Good at
That was
everything.
Ugh.
How would you feel if you were suddenly transported into this thing? I would need somebody to hold my hand and show me around, show
Yeah.
me everything. It wouldn't be like,
Save me,
oh,
save
I know
me.
where I'm
Yeah.
going. I don't know how to act. I don't know, like, and there's also, like, this racism between the users and the programs, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, like, if he's found out as a user, like, he's going to be hurting. And this is the first time that he's ever had to face anything like that, right? Because he's always been a privileged, rich, sad boy.
Yeah.
This is the first time that he is being hunted.
Yeah. But even when faced with that, he could barely give less
he
of a
doesn't
shit.
care.
Less of a shit. Like, he does
It's
not
It's
care.
not real for him.
No.
I think Cora being kidnapped also played into, not only did they need to talk, but they needed to be 100% on the same page for one thing. Because they were not for anything else. It was like, okay, I guess we'll get out. Like, it took the son fucking up royally, right? Because he was going through his thing. And then Boomer Daddy to come in and save everything and clean up the mess and teach his son the lesson that he needed to learn in order to live.
Yeah.
And they teamed up for that. The two generations can close the gap, and we can work together if it's to save women or tell women what to do
Yeah.
or control women, I guess.
But then, like,
that
so-
isn't the realest shit, though. Like, the only time that shitty dudes get together and not talk about how the other one fucked up the thing is when they're talking about how much better they are than women and why women shouldn't have rights. Like, the only time they can agree is when it's through a misogynistic lens.
That's it.
And then, like, the whole thing with, like, they built the ISOs up to be, like, this whole big thing, right? And, like, they were, like, they didn't even pay off. And then, like, Flynn is like, well, I had to save her. She's the last of her kind. She's whatever. But they're so willing to, like, throw her out and let her... She literally is shielding Boy Flynn from all of this harm whenever, like, they get into any sort of confrontation or anything.
Yeah.
She puts herself between the attacker and Flynn. And she's acting as a shield, literally shielding him from having to confront hate, from having to confront, like, anything.
And she gets no credit for it. After the scene in the bar where she loses her arm or whatever and she's passed out because we can't have too many women on the screen at once, Sam tells Dad, he goes, she risked her life for me. And then Dad all lovingly looks at his son and goes, some things are worth the risk.
When the whole fucking
She
time...
is the savior of the world. Her digital blood can cure cancer or whatever the fuck that storyline is. I don't know. She's being played up as the savior of humanity. If we can get her out, she will fix all of the world's problems. Oh, but she can die to save my son.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Like, for real! Ooh, this just makes me so fucking infuriated.
So you know who the only character I like actually really liked in this movie?
Who?
Speaking of the bar scene?
Castor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he's so good.
What's the actor's name?
Michael Sheen.
Michael Sheen, that's right. I loved this weird little Bowie moment that was just like fun circus, like Bowie, but also like I love fighting and I am kind of a weasel and also they weren't here and here's a drink. And it was just like this weird amalgam of all of these things, and like that character to me was so fun. And it was like sure problematic in certain aspects, but for that world was the most unproblematic part of this whole movie. Even for the shittiness that we obviously know, because he's just like, I mean, he's kind of a con man. He's going to take in whoever's money. Doesn't matter.
Right.
All that stuff. He was the most wholesome part, or at least not most wholesome, most unproblematic part of this, and that's why I loved him so much.
I loved him so much, and like I didn't realize he was also based off of Mark Bolan too from T-Rex. So it's like Mark Bolan and David Bowie had a baby, and we get him, and I just love every minute of him being on the screen. And okay, so let's tie him into this whole discussion on women, right?
Okay.
So the whole reason that Sam gets to this guy is because the woman gives him the knowledge, right? And then we have that weird shot of the apple. So she's supposed to be like Eve, this whole terrible thing, right?
Hated that.
Hated it. So,
a literal apple. A chrome apple.
So he gets...
So boring.
Flynn...
Like, wow. How are we going to make this allegory happen?
And then he could see himself in the
what
apple,
What if the apple
too,
was
right?
chrome? And somebody was like...
Because it's a computer.
Yes! You can see all the other members are just like...
Yeah!
So smart. You're so smart.
So many dudes high-fived in that writer's
such a good
room.
job.
Oh, man.
Sorry, I interrupted you again. What were you saying?
Oh, no. That was so
Oh,
good.
my God.
So, Boy Wonder goes to see David Bowie, and he's like, oh, are you Zeus? Yeah, well, who's talking? Well, my friend Cora. And so, remember when Sam gets into the digital world and is dressed by the women?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, the four women that come out and undress him and redress him.
they're called sirens. That's their character name.
Okay.
And so they go in there, and I thought it was really interesting because they also give him his data disc and stuff. So men gain their identity and gain their place in the world through women, right?
They also point out that he's special. Oh, this one's different.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Ugh, gross. Which I thought the way that like they all walked in together and like when they like went back and became a part of the wall, that was fucking dope. I was so here for that, right? So he gets to the club because Jem, who's one of the sirens, finds him and when she's off or whatever, because apparently they
have jobs, I
have
guess?
working hours? Yeah.
Okay,
Weird,
that's a whole
right?
other thing, but go on.
Weird, right? So she's like, hey, baby. And she's like, her whole character is just dripping sexuality, right?
Yeah.
That is her defining trait. And that's the only thing she's allowed to be.
Yeah.
So she takes him to the club, being all sexy on him and stuff, and then gets to Zeus, and she's like sitting in the corner, and he's like, Boy Wonder says Cora's name. How I read this was David Bowie dude's reaction was like, oh, like, you know, kind of like the reaction you would have if somebody said like your ex-girlfriend's name in front of your new girlfriend. Because like he said Cora, and he's like, oh, yeah. And then Jem in the corner was like, ugh. Like she was just so pissed at like hearing this woman's name. Because that's the only time, the reason I also wanted to bring that part up is because two women, other than the sirens, are never on screen together. And the only time that they even talk about other women is that scene when she is mentioned and she's just like, ugh.
It's disgust and contentment, yeah.
So, like, it's pitting women against each other.
Oh, for sure.
And there's no camaraderie at all.
Totally. The fact, even when Jem is off the clock, she's not hanging out with her work friends, which, again, I guess they have jobs?
Yeah, what does that mean in the context of this?
Like, because they're computer programs. So are they, like, is the computer off? I don't know. I have a lot of confusing questions about the infrastructure of this world that I'm going to talk about in a little bit.
Maybe it's like a Wreck-It Ralph situation, right? Maybe they just, when the computer's off, they go do their thing.
Sure.
It seemed like they were trying to do some sort of world-buildy Blade Runner shit on top of this idea that they are all programs and have things to do as opposed to that, but they wanted to make them feel more autonomous and more like Star Wars-y.
No, you're totally right. Like, first of all, if the first one was We Wish We Had Star Wars, this one is Practice Star Wars, because there's a lot of things in this movie that came up in the new Disney Star Wars movies, like the whole thing when Clue built his army at the end. It's almost literally the exact same shot as the whole speech in front of the First Order in Force Awakens. Like, whatever. It's Practice Star Wars now that Disney had it.
Oh, so it was a practice for Star Wars is what you're saying.
Yeah, now that... So
gotcha.
The first Tron movie was, we wish we had Star Wars, here's the best we can do.
Now
this one's like, we're going to get Star Wars, let's practice. But, so you mentioned that whole kind of Blade Runner vibe that this movie has of there's slums and there's all this stuff. Like, that was really confusing to me, not just because it doesn't make sense in terms of that they're fucking computer programs, but we have Clue, who is our villain, who is 1985 Jeff Bridges. He says in 85 he created him, and he has been 1985 Jeff Bridges the whole time. Mm-hmm. He was created to make this a perfect world. That's his job. That's his role as a program. Is all he knows how to do. Which I guess at one point he decides that the ISOs are not perfect, so he wipes them out. And they're worried if he gets out, they're like, well, our world is full of imperfections. He's going to wipe everybody out. There are so many motherfucking imperfections in this digital world. Like, there is poverty. There is wealth inequality. Like, when...
there's a class system.
There's a class system. Sam gives away his bike to the hobo, essentially.
Yeah.
The transient, so he won't get caught, which, fucking terrible anyway. But, like, this is such already a mirror of the, quote, imperfections of our world. Like, the guards in Castor's Club are distracted by escorts, quote, quote. And because Sam's all nervous, and he's like, don't worry, they're distracted. Wink. So what... They talk so much about perfection in this movie, and they don't define it ever, because I don't know if the idea is that Clue is bad at his job. Like, he became evil, so he wants this imperfections, even though that goes against his coding. It's not clear then why he even wants to get out, but like... And then they have the fucking cliche moment at the end of like, perfection was right in front of you the whole time because it's your family. Your family is perfect. Again, those fucking conservative traditional values of your family is important. That's what perfection is. Not
so boring.
Not advancement, not saving the world, not making the world a better place. It's just being close to the ones you love. Ignore the problems outside as long as you hug inside.
Well, like you said, literally he's more worried about his son than the well-being of the entirety of the world.
Yeah.
In that one moment where it's like, well, I saved my son.
And that's all that matters.
Yeah, that's all that matters. Family's all that
Family
matters.
first.
Well, and so I think this... so with the last movie, like, one of the big things was the grass is always greener, right? And so I think it was supposed to be kind of a mirror of that. The whole reason that Flynn, I think, was trying to build this world and trying to... Because his initial idea was to create a world where there's no imperfections, where, everything is great. There's no war, there's no this, which is like very subjective to his idea of...
To an American white man's idea.
Correct. Yeah. And because it's easier to start over than it is to rebuild.
Damn.
And so...
That's good.
Thank you. So, of course, he's going to want to spend more time in the digital world and try to build this thing because not only is it easier to build something new, but it's easier to build something new when it's in your own ideal perfection, like your own utopia.
And when you're in control of that utopia also.
Correct. So what Clue represents is kind of the mirror of that. So he is in the system and he feels like he's gotten it as good as he can. But to me, it feels like he thinks the users need to be wiped out because they're using him or they are part of the problem. Because otherwise, why the fuck would he care? Why the fuck would he want to go outside of this? Or if that's not how he feels, it's because he knows that this place is a little bit fucked up. He knows Flynn exists here. So it's easier to try to start over somewhere else.
In the real world.
Rather than trying to fix up the problems and the shit that he's made here. not realizing that when he goes to the other side, he can't do that shit where, oh, you're an accounting program? No, I'm reprogramming you, and you are now a war bot.
A soldier. He makes a whole fucking army, yeah.
American colonialism.
So I think that's another thing, is just the grass is always greener. You always want what you can't have. It seems easier to try to go outside of what you know and change it rather than do what you need to do in your own situation to get to where you need to be.
And also because men in power always want to expand their power.
That too.
Manifest destiny.
They don't want to take care of it. They just want more of it.
I conquered it. Next thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mommy, I'm bored with this toy. What's the next one?
And there's, like, at the end too, like, when they're reintegrating Clue and...
Flynn.
Yeah. God, I suck at names. But, like, when they're reintegrating and everything, like, Clue is, like, telling him, he's like, I just try to do what you told me to do. Like, I try to do what you programmed me to do. And he's like, I know, buddy. It's cool. But, like, the whole time, the whole fucking situation, this whole thing happened because Jeff Bridges' character could not fucking say, I fucked up, I'm sorry. And he couldn't fix his own mistakes. He couldn't face himself. It was harder for him to say, shit, I fucked up. He would rather see genocide happen. He would rather see people in poverty. He would rather see, you know, this totalitarian state that it is and never see his fucking family or his son again because he done fucked up.
So that brings us actually to our next topic, which is the sponsorship of the show, Talkspace. Why we should go to therapy and learn how to talk about our feelings.
Just cry.
Just cry.
Fine.
Just literally cry.
I promise you'll feel better.
For a second. Just cry about something instead of being tough Batman.
Nobody likes it. It's boring. We don't.
And it's like, well, men are just wired different. Shut up. Oh my God, just cry. Just cry. Literally just cry. Cry and be vulnerable, feel small, and then you can grow up. And it's so nice and it feels so good and you're going to be so much better for it. You're going to stop ruining your friends and family relationship dynamics because you just don't know how to handle your own stuff. You're going to
causing genocide, apparently.
Or causing genocide, yeah.
Genocide.
Oh my God. I mean, I am convinced that that's how every war has been started. It's just some stupid guy who doesn't know how to fucking cry about something. Or
wrong.
gets mad about some small thing that if he knew how to use his words eloquently and empathetically would be able to resolve this small issue that gets blown up into some big, huge, disproportional thing where he's like, we need to kill every one of them. Go to sleep. Now.
Yes. Yes, please.
So boring. It's just like, it's so boring. I don't know. Literally, though, go to therapy. Everyone go to therapy.
I also found, like, both the villain and this one and the last one, like, you know, it felt like, yeah, okay, like, the real villain is you, yourself, you know, and what you want and what you think that you want. But then the thing that was just really tiring for me is just making, like, oh, it's the big bad, and you know it's the big bad because it's this militarized, totalitarian state, and it's just like, because, it's harder to make it's harder to make...
villain?
Yeah, or, like, it's harder for that, so we just need to go fucking all the way in. It's only bad. There's no good, it's only bad. It's just so boring. Like you're saying, it's like First Order, or it's like every other fucking movie, like communism is bad, all this other stuff. It's like,
it's the go-to for American audiences because we hate any system of government that isn't ours. That's why we're anti-socialism, anti-communism. I mean, rightfully anti-fascism, but like anything that's different is bad, and this government is different than ours. Therefore, they're villains.
And we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah, but
believe us.
They're bad. Trust me.
Yeah, but I do think you hit it right on the head right out of the gate. This is a boomer story. This is written by boomers, for boomers, to explain why conservative values are more important than the well-being of the world.
And also, I had a thought when I was watching the end of this movie, too, similar to that, going off that, of we have to deal with this reality where Clue is the villain, but Clue is Flynn. Like, he is his avatar. We talked about what avatars represent before. Clue represents Flynn's avatar. So we have this problematic situation where the avatar of our hero is also our villain, which means it was kind of in him all along, this kind of, or at least these tendencies. And I think one of the ways they kind of visually represent that, oh no, don't worry, Flynn's different, is, or at least try to, without a lot of critical thinking, is when Cora gets captured. For literally no fucking reason. But she gets captured, and Clue goes up to her, And he's like, oh, I've got you. And he like brushes his hand against her face, all fucking creepy, and like tucks her hair behind her ear. And it's like, as the audience, we cringe, right? Because, oh my God, what a fucking creep. Oh, but Flynn never touched her. Flynn just helped her and taught her to read fucking dead white male authors. So I think that's like one of the ways of like, oh, look, but like Flynn's okay because he didn't touch her, but Clue's creepy because he touched her, because Clue represents 1985 Flynn. And, back then we didn't know any better. That's just the way we were. It was just boy talk, locker room talk. But now in 2010, now we've grown, so now it's okay. So my shitty past behavior that represents me in Clue in this form, that was the old me. Don't hold me to those same standards, because now I'm 2010 guy. Now I'm cool.
Yeah.
Fuck, that's so good.
My behavior's forgiven, right? LOL.
It's saying essentially that physical abuse is more important than mental or emotional abuse, because if we're talking about exactly the dynamic between Jeff Bridges and Cora, he's essentially grooming, like a lot of people do with young women, is grooming these young girls to be somebody that they objectify later, that they desire later, and that's disgusting. And it's abuse in the same way that physical abuse manifests itself, whether physically or whether sexually or otherwise. But we as the audience, like you said, we cringe because we see the physical manifestation of that abuse. But when we're talking about that other thing, well, it's harmless.
Yeah,
it's harmless
teaching how to read. Dead white male authors.
And then also, too, like you were saying, Danny, like, because we didn't know better before and we do now, then it's fine. It's not fine. It doesn't make it okay. I mean, these problems were always there. You were just too privileged to see it.
Exactly.
And you weren't affected by it. And yeah, I think that's really the thing. And I think it's just fucking disgusting that that's allowed to be the narrative. And then that's kind of oh, God, it's just so tiring.
It's another example of boomers justifying or not even boomers, anybody justifying their past behavior. In this case, I get the sense that it is boomers, but older men in general, whatever, justifying their past behavior of like, oh, I didn't know, but I'm cool now, so don't worry about it. Like,
well, and there's like,
I don't need to say sorry because
it was a different time.
Because it's a different time and I'm different now.
And there is something to be said about like restorative justice and things like that, but that's not what we're talking about here, right? Because, oh God, this is such a fucking big, hard conversation that like everybody's still kind of figuring out like what the fuck to do with this, right? Yeah. But like the thing to do about it is not to say like, oh, it's different times. It was before blackface wasn't okay. Like, fuck off. That has never been okay.
Yeah. It's like, well, it was just different time. No, that was still a disgusting choice that you made. You didn't have a lot of people telling you it was disgusting.
That's the difference. Yeah.
That's the difference.
Well, and this is why it's so important to have, like, before a lot of these, like, what we'll call the boomer mentality was shaped by cis white dudes that had privilege and had power, and that, like, the system back then was working for them. There was a middle class. There was all of this. But now, because of, I believe, the rise of social media and things like that, everybody has a voice. And now, we're talking about inclusion, and we're talking about all of this stuff and how it's fucked up, and how if there was, a couple of women writers in this room, this would not have been an issue. This would not have happened, or it would have been handled so much better. And it's so crazy to me that this is just like, 9 years ago?
Yeah.
Like, even going back and looking at stuff 9 years ago, this shit was still so fucked up.
Yeah.
And the way that they got so many people to see this and just not even really think about it is because they had so much nostalgia in this, in the way that they put things like the door scene, right? Oh, it's a big door, right?
The big red door? The exact same
lines in the first movie,
the exact same line. Dillinger's kid is now the big bad, which, like, let's talk about generational wealth and knowledge later, because that's
nepotism.
A big thing. And nepotism and all of that.
What do you mean he earned it? I don't know what you mean.
Right? Even because Dillinger is disgraced at the end of Tron, so even the son of a disgraced white guy can still.
Why the fuck does he have a job?
Yeah.
It's called they're called fail sons.
But like the people that wrote this movie, like, so to clarify, I did still like this movie, but I liked it because of those nostalgia factors, because it was written by people that loved Tron.
Yeah.
By people that knew what they would want to see or what we would want to see, right? But that's also what held it back the most, too. We couldn't have we have Dillinger's son in here, all right, fine, whatever. Flynn literally capitalizes on his experience in the grid, right? Where he, like, makes all these video games and all this other stuff. And his kid is also wrapped up in that nostalgia. His fucking room is a shrine to Tron. And as somebody that was watching it, right, I was like, fuck yeah, because, like, I had some of those posters, you know? Like, I was just like, oh, this is so cool. But it was all just, like, to keep you focused on those moments and not the actual narrative that was at play.
Yeah. And like you said, if there were different people in that writer's room, right, helping construct this narrative, a lot of these issues that made this story so shitty would have been solved within the first week. Because as soon as you start having these conversations about abuse, about inclusion, about objectification of women, all of these things, colonialization, you have all these conversations, that's where the writers of color would step up and be like, actually, no, your intent, like, the intention in this storyline is this. Let's have a conversation about that now, and about this, and about inclusion. And then the women in the room would have been like, yeah, let's have a talk about exactly this. Like, you're writing from what you know, and this is a very white male perspective. You're writing from this because you've been allowed to write these stories forever. So if there's anybody else in there to actually give some sort of, I've lived this life. Like, let's talk about what that means to me and what I see when you say something or do or write a narrative like that. It would have been different. And I think you're exactly right. It's exactly what held this back, because visually, the movie was dope. I loved all the action scenes and all, like, what is the term for dying?
Derez.
Derez or whatever.
Whenever they would derez, gorgeous. They turned into, like, these crystallized pieces of glass. Yep. Like, it sounded awesome. It looked awesome. The sets were cool. Some of the world building was, like, whatever, but, like, generally it was really,
I wanted more.
It was aesthetically pleasing. I was so visually, I was just like, ooh, candy. There was so much there that's just like,
with the Daft Punk soundtrack too, it's like, fuck yeah,
gorgeous,
fuck yes.
Yeah. And
like,
so all of these things were so in its favor. But again, if we're talking about stories, which this podcast talks a lot about, the story was so bad because it was so exclusive to the American narrative of storytelling that, again, just re-solidifies the patriarchy. It re-upholds these ideals and these standards of whiteness in Western culture. And that's why this movie, I liked it, but I didn't, I said I liked it in a way, in that sentence, that made it seem like I said that I liked the patriarchy, like that thing. No, I liked the movie. For what
Thanks
it was.
for clearing that up.
Okay, I just don't, because I know there was, like, in the same sentence, there may or may not have been a comma and or period there, and I'm not sure where that lies, but I liked the movie for what it was. The story was garbage. God-awful trash.
It was pleasing to the senses, like the eyes and the ears, and like, whoa, it's a thrill, it's a non-stop thrill ride, we have the quote on the back of the box or whatever. But then when you actually sit down to think about it, it's like, oh, well,
but that's the shitty thing, right? Is that we have to, like, in order to be like, oh yeah, I like this movie, it's good, we actually have to, like, we're so distracted by all of those things that we have to, like, sit here and do a podcast to critically analyze the storytelling elements. And it's just, we're just so used to, like, seeing a piece of media and seeing it for what it is, not actually looking at the deeper narrative of what it's telling us and how those stories and how what it's saying is really affecting us.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that people are doing that work now on a broader scale, and it's not just a bunch of white dudes critically looking at other white dudes' work.
You know, like, and I will say, like, even in this podcast, like, right now, we are all white. Like, that is just a fact. So,
sorry.
I know, exactly. But that's a part of it. Like, we all gain so much from a patriarchal white supremacist structure. You and I, Danny, more so than Jess, because of that patriarchal aspect.
Sorry,
correct? Again, yeah. But it's recognizing the structure itself, and then through this process of communication and conversation, dismantling it in a way, or at least attempting to, by way of exposing it in that way, right? Having the conversation about these stories and why they're problematic, and why, even if it felt like, well, that's just how this story went. No, that's not how this story went. That was a choice. These people made this choice, and it's coming from a perspective. Change it. Or give somebody else a fucking voice. Give somebody else a chance.
Well, and the thing that we can do as people that have that privilege is bring people up.
Yeah.
You know, make sure that, like, in our humor and, you know, in our stories, that we're not punching down.
Yeah.
And make sure that everybody has a chance to tell their story, because it's, like, white stories are so boring.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, that's just what all the stories that have existed for the most part, I mean, that we document at least, they're just
for
white
Western
stories.
Culture, yeah.
For Western culture, yeah. And so, it's a matter of having the conversation to then be able to have these talks, but then also to like make the mistakes of it and then grow from them, and then acknowledging and admitting those mistakes and then learning from it. I just think that's
the whole thing about this film.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
The whole thing about this film is Daddy Flynn could not say he fucked up and could not say sorry. And then when he did, it is such a cataclysmic event that, like, the whole fucking portal is, like, destroyed and all this other stuff. Like, it's so monumental for this man to admit that he was wrong that it literally, like, explodes. Like, it causes, like, the two worlds to be separated.
He's so afraid to be vulnerable.
How wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I say my joke?
Please.
Okay. So, the whole reason that Clue was able to find Flynn after supposed, like, years and years and years and years of looking and not finding him was because when Boy Wonder drove out on his bike and took it into the main part of town, he forgot to drive in incognito mode. So the cookies and everything were still there. So
like
he could
a
trace
computer
it
website.
I'm not sure that I delivered that well. You can say
like
it. It's fine. You can do it.
Don't mean to do the joke? No,
Sure,
this is your joke. You own that joke. I'm not going to take the woman's identity for my own benefit, which is the end of this movie, by the way. There's a very...
I love that segue.
Poignant moment at the end of this movie where they're all at this holy fucking teleportation temple, what the fuck ever, where Clue's trying to get out. And the only way they can get out is with Flynn's...
His data disc?
Identity disc. It's literally called an identity disc. It represents your whole identity as a person and everything that you come to know in this world and everything you've learned and everything you've ever experienced. He trades with Cora as the trick. The only way Cora gets out of this world is with Flynn's identity. He gives her his whole being and everything he represents, and now it's okay for her to pass through this literal gate. That's the only way she is allowed out to become, quote, a real person.
He gave her a ring, and now she's his, and
I mean, it is a ring.
Well, and then, oh my god.
He liked it, so he put a ring on it.
And then look at that last scene when she's out there waiting with his bike. And then they go driving, and she's like, wow, look at this world. He gets to be that gatekeeper for her and show her everything and be the one.
The way he wants her to
perceive the world.
And she's not wearing a helmet. You're the fucking savior of humanity. Wear a fucking helmet, please.
Yeah.
And again, this film ends the exact same way as the other one, where it's dark throughout the whole film. It's nighttime. It's ominous. It's all that shit. And then when they get out, all of a sudden it's daytime. And now it's a whole new day because he gets to show this woman a whole new life that's not dark anymore and not sad.
He's the light of her life.
Yeah.
And the fact that it ends the exact same way, like, is such a final exclamation mark on the whole idea that this movie got as far as it did because of the nostalgia factor. This movie exists because of nostalgia. They wanted to be like, hey, remember?
Well, even the title, right? It's Tron Legacy. Tron is in this for, like, maybe total 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And we don't really talk about him very much. We just refer to him as, like, he got corrupt.
He got brainwashed, but then he remembers at the end. So cool. Thanks, Tron. And then he dies.
Like,
cool, thanks.
I fight for the user. No, you die for the user now. You drown for the user. So, like, even the title was just super nostalgic.
Yeah, I think that's... And like I said, the way that ends is just like such a... It's one last, like, rubbing our face in it of, like, remember? Remember all this?
Remember how cool that was when you were a kid? Remember?
Thanks for your money.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the first one. Who is it for?
Who's it for? The first one was for...
I think it was for aspiring tech bros.
Yeah.
And just really anybody that loved video games.
I'm going to just say generally it was for big asterisk nerds.
That's me.
Yeah. But, again, big asterisk, whatever that means. But, because it's such a generalized term. But that's what I think it was. That's who I think it was for.
Yeah, people who play video games are like, look, you can be a hero too. And like, or people who don't understand the internet and technology. Well, there was no internet.
Well, also,
people who don't understand computers, like, this is what it's like inside your computer. The programs are hanging out and playing Pong and Death Frisbee and shit. Oh, interesting. Okay, cool, neat.
All right. So what did we think of it? Did we like it?
I liked it, yeah. I mean, again, for everything that it was, I still thought it was cool. I thought it was innovative visually, because that obviously, like, kind of changed the game with what could be possible. And it took a big old swing on some visual aesthetics, and I think it made a mark. It left a lasting impression, enough to create an entire nostalgic fandom behind it, to where it had the momentum it did to create the second one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I think you're right about the visual thing. I think if it had been less visually stunning, I don't think it would have held up as well in this like cult classic, whatever kind of...
Do you know what this would have been if the visual impact didn't happen as hard as it did?
What would that have been?
This would have been that dumb Incredible Hulk movie from the 70s. Or Hercules, sorry.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, Hercules?
No.
Or that was Conan?
It was Lou Ferrigno. I think it was Lou Ferrigno. No? Am I crazy? Am I wrong? Am I making this up? Did I have a dream about this?
I don't know.
You know what? Yell at me. My handle is elefebvre on every platform. If I'm wrong, please just at me. Tell me how ridiculous this sounds. And
it would have been that, or it would have been any shitty early 80s generic action movie.
Yeah.
That, like, oh, this is kind of neat, but then it's really forgettable except for like a small sect of people, whereas this one's like, oh, we all love Tron, and if you don't like Tron, what's wrong with you, kind of thing. Like, it's one of those movies where if you don't like it, people are like, oh my god, why?
Yeah.
It's like, oh shit, sorry.
I'm sorry.
But I mean, I do like it though.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like, the fandom can be a little bit gatekeepery on it.
Yeah, I agree.
So, the next Tron Legacy. Was it new or interesting?
It
Progressive? Regressive?
It was regressive, and it was more visually interesting than the first. I think what it excelled at was those awesome visuals and giving exactly what the fandom wanted, which was crispy, crispy candy visuals of the beautiful and the wonderful and fantastic. Nom, 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 nom. Give me all of that.
And so many Easter eggs.
Yeah, and so many. They
Yeah.
just played into it. But it was incredibly regressive narratively and was just so poorly written. It was just not good. That wasn't good.
Yeah.
In that aspect. But visually, I was like,
If you turn off your brain and just let your eyes and your ears experience it, like, I bet this was fucking awesome in 3D or IMAX.
Oh,
Like,
It
for
was.
sure. Yeah.
It was like, he's like, just fucking candy. Just,
yeah.
oh, give it to me. Yes,
Yeah.
in my veins.
Yeah.
Daft Punk. Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Laser bikes. Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
All this cool shit. And then you think about it and go, oh, actually, well, The first time I saw this movie in theaters when it came out, and I was like, fuck yes. I love this movie. I'm fucking ready for this to be a franchise. The Cillian Murphy cameo, I was like, sweet, they're building up to be the villain in part 2.
Yeah.
Like, I'm into it. I'm ready. I'm so ready. And one of the reasons that I wanted to be on this episode of the podcast is not because I, like, worship the original Tron necessarily, but because I wanted to, like, yell and complain that all the Tron sequels got canceled.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, I wish there were more Tron movies. And now watching it again in 2019, I'm like, okay, all right. I still like it for those reasons of it's pretty and it's got the fucking cool ass. It's a cool movie, like cool in that sense of like, I don't know, just cool, but
visually cool,
like viscerally cool.
Yeah.
It appeals to my senses. Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as I don't think about it too much.
It's a 5 chewing gum commercial.
Yeah. I mean, like, chewing gum's a good example. Like, oh, it's really good, and then it's gone in 5 seconds, and now I want to spit it out.
Yeah, exactly.
So I definitely changing my opinion based on this new viewing. So
Also same.
yeah.
Like, damn. Like, that boomer thing just hit so hard.
It was so good.
So hard, damn.
Especially
So good.
in 2019. Like, I know the movie's in 2010, but like in 2019, it's just fucking worse.
Yeah.
So
Really, for real. Who do we think this was for?
Boomers. Like, straight up white boomers.
Tron fans, like, this movie exists because of nostalgia.
Oh.
More so than I think a lot of remakes. Like, a lot of remakes are just like, oh, it'd be cool to reimagine this. This is just like, fucking remember Tron? Here you go. Especially with all the Easter eggs. Like, there's the exact same lines of dialogue a couple times. There's a lot of the same plot points.
There's a big red door.
Yeah. It feels very similar. Like, it feels similar on purpose. Like, it's for Tron lovers specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like a love letter to the fandom
Yeah.
from a boomer's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
well, a white male's perspective of a lot of ages.
Oh, yeah.
Even though Sam's our mirror, since we are all shitty millennials on this podcast, LOL. He's like
LOL instead of laughing out loud.
Right? That's computer
So
speak for laughing out loud, Grandpa.
Yeah.
Anyways.
He's not listening.
He's not listening. He doesn't know how to work a fucking computer.
He doesn't know what a podcast is.
Yeah.
So, like, even though through that one viewing, he's like our foil, so we're supposed to be like, oh, cool, but the way they wrote him is he sucks. So, because he's a white dude who gets everything he wants, and that sucks. So,
yeah. How did you feel about this?
Oh,
What do you think? You think it was for the fandom?
I think it was for the fandom, like, because I knew a lot of people that were super, super excited. So I was the asterisk big nerd, you know. And spoiler alert, I hung out with big nerds, you know. And I use that term lovingly, and
so do I.
Yeah,
that was 100% in a loving way.
I know you do. I just want to clarify.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
and I wear that with like a badge of honor. You know, I do the convention thing. I do all this other stuff, but. Yeah, it was, when it came out, like, I remember the marketing was phenomenal for this. Like, they didn't just take so much care with the film, they took care with everything around it. And they did stuff for, like, the arena scene, for instance. It was the actual audience from the Comic-Con Hall H panel that made it into the film.
Oh, wow.
You know, they did so much because they knew who their audience was. And they just gave them everything they wanted. And they let them play into it. They actually let them be a part of the film. Yeah. And I think that there's something really great and wonderful about that as somebody that's, like, such a big fan of a property. But I was just really bummed that the story sucked so bad.
Yeah.
And I think because of that nostalgia factor, they felt like they could kind of skate by on the story of, like... What's the movie about? I don't know. It's his son, and they fight on bikes, and there's a girl. It doesn't matter. Tron, though. Look at the lights.
Green light.
Well, it was like, what's going to look cool?
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. And, you know, they did an awesome job with marketing. Again, they did a great job with everything that I wanted them to do was done. So it was done by a fan for fans.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which is awesome. And that's cool that it's cool when a franchise remembers where it comes from and wants to give back to the people that made it big. Like, this is such a huge cult classic.
Yeah.
Like, I think we were talking about off air, I guess, that it kind of bombed the box office, but then got really, really popular once it came out, like on VHS or whatever. And then it's kind of weird that
the video game too.
The video game as well, yeah. And it's kind of weird that Legacy also kind of bombed the box office, which is why they canceled all the sequels. And didn't really seem to catch on in that same kind of cult way. Maybe because people wised up. I don't know.
I just wish it had better writers. If it had better writers, like this could have been amazing because they got everything right. They were fucking there, and then they just dropped the ball on like one of the most important parts.
Yeah,
you mean treating people well?
I mean a lot. Yeah, yeah. But anyways, I think that's
it.
Yeah.
That was Tron. Yeah, thank you, Danny, for being here and giving us your gorgeous insight and critical brain.
Thanks so much for having me. This was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you so much, Danny. We appreciate you, and thank you for everything you do to help us make this podcast happen.
No problem. I can't wait to go back in my room and start editing this now.
Get ready to listen to your own voice.
Oh my God, it's going to be terrible.
All right, so thank you so much for listening. You can write into us at nostalgiapodcast@gmail.com. Please subscribe, the whole thing. You know the deal. We're now on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, all the places that you get your podcasts. So let us know what you think.
Yeah.
And if you have any ideas for future episodes for us, we have a giant queue, but we're always looking for more ideas. Mm-hmm. So you can reach out to us at that email or all the social medias. We're nostalgia.pod on Instagram. And pretty much...
And Twitter, too, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well,
also, 5-star all of our stuff if you like it. Write reviews for us if you like it. And, yeah, we're just going to keep doing this because it's fun. And we love y'all, even if you don't love us.
Yeah. We want to thank David Tricero for providing tech support, Danny Barkley for producing and editing.
Hello.
And thank you, Eric, for being wonderful.
Thank you, Jess. This is a joy and a privilege, and I am very thankful to do this all the time.
Me too. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.